Hello everyone and welcome to this new episode of 10 Questions About Cloud. Today we have Subhasish Ghosh with us. Welcome, Subhasish.
Hey, hi Pablo, great to be here.
Thank you very much for accepting my invitation. I always use the first question basically to introduce yourself. So who are you?
Okay, so I'm basically, a cloud solution architect, data and artificial intelligence at Microsoft. So I'm part of the Microsoft, Corporation India, and I'm part of an SMCC that basically stands for Small, Medium and Corporate Business Group inside Microsoft India. So what it basically means is I work primarily with our customers and help them kind of, envisioning the implementation of the digital transformation journeys. So I basically connect with either C-level, executives and also a lot of chief architect, enterprise architect, and data engineers I get to work on, and mainly leverage, the Microsoft data platform, data services, machine learning, AI, and that's my current role. And before this, I was part of again Oracle India for 3 years. I worked on the Oracle Cloud extensively. I worked on also on premises. If you're aware of things like OCM, XRCM, database machines, and so on. And before that, I also worked very actively on Amazon Web Services for since its inception, actually 2009. So I was part of 3 advanced consulting and 1 premier consulting partner. So, a mixed bag, a lot of work on cloud specifically I've done.
Wow, that sounds really, really interesting. And definitely also challenging since you have been working with multiple cloud providers and in multiple roles. I'm sure that you have learned a lot during the journey.
Absolutely. It's a continuous, journey of learning, self-assessment, what things are outstanding today, maybe 6 months down the line or 1 year down the line. The solutions are maybe abruptly different because new things have come up, right? So especially in data, what I specialize in, you really need to keep up with the modern trends.
I'm really curious now, when was the first time that you hear the word cloud?
Okay, so precisely if you say the year, I can tell you very precisely, it's 2009. How I telling you? Because, I basically started my career like very young, like 16. I was already doing a lot of Linux programming, but those days we had, GTK plus toolkit. We used to do those IDE development and Linux kernel and all of that. But then, after engineering, I started working for a company in 2009 where our tracking domain used to go down continuously. Then we used to give it a massive beefy server, yet it used to go down. So then, people, we got to know that a company called Amazon Web Services is launched. They currently have 1 region only. They have just gone live in 2008, and they have a fundamental called auto scaling. That means as you can have groups, and then servers get added as per your scale up increases. We really migrated that tracking domain. So 2009 I came to know about this concept. But then because I had a PaaS background, .NET development background, I did an MCSD, MCSE. So then I also started working on Azure, but the PaaS of Azure. Then 2014 onwards, I was very fortunate of working with a company called Aditi Technologies, which was one of the global consulting partners of Microsoft. So there I got introduced into this WAIS, we used to call it Windows Azure Infrastructure Services. It later became Windows Azure, then they removed the word Windows and it became Microsoft Azure. And today it's the fundamental Azure. So I worked on like 2009 onwards on it's, inception of all of them, the AWS, the Azure, then Oracle and Google, of course.
Oh, that's really long time.
Yeah, absolutely. It's like from the very inception.
Incredible. And maybe it's a good question for you since you have so many years of experience and you already know how many advantages the cloud offers over on-premises environments. Maybe you can tell us, in your opinion, what are the biggest advantages? Not all of them, just
correct. See, it really depends from customer to customer and also the stack on which they are in. So there is no rigid one fixed answer. But from my perspective, let's say because I'm focusing on Microsoft technologies and Azure specifically, 3 things always come out. Like when I talk to CXOs or CTOs who are either in the journey or midway in the journey or already maturing, right? So first is they always want to choose a platform of choice which is not just ad hoc. It's not just about migrating one virtual machine or doing a serverless code execution. Often they ask do I also get to work on a platform where I get to integrate my maybe communication system? It could be O365. Maybe Outlook. Maybe I want to invest in a platform where I already have a SharePoint since last 10 years. or I may need to reuse my licensing platform, plus do a little bit of data estate modernization with bringing some of that license. So this question becomes a very vital thing. So that's where Azure, is extremely good. It's closely integrated with your Microsoft stack of things, either Windows or open source. That always gives a very good edge to, our competitors. Second is, again, very important, hyperscale. That term has a lot of meaning to CXOs nowadays. Even I have in my set of customers, in fact, a few who have their own data centers, but for the newer workloads, they're choosing Azure. Why, if you ask me? Because the rate at which they can add compute, storage, networking is much slower than what Microsoft can do. It's practically the fundamental is every country, every region, every quarter, you will see one new region, right? So the ability to quickly add scale and the availability of those scale is fundamental to hyperscale. It's not just I add 2 boxes to my room, right? It's about how do I give SLA to that? And third, again, is very, very important is, which I see as a major advantage to cloud is, it's not just again about hosting your apps or bringing your license on cloud, but what's the next step? Every company now wants to dig into data. Data is the new oil, right? So every organization, even the ones which are on hybrid, still they would say, you know what, for analytics of cloud, for SQL, for NoSQL, for maybe a different other type of batch real-time streaming data type of use cases, right? We would love to explore cloud. The reason is, the possibilities are endless. So a lot of advantages, but these 3 actually stand out, when I work with customers on a day-to-day basis.
Wow, really, really powerful. And I totally agree with you. These 3 advantages are very important, but there are a lot of them, but we will not talk about all of them.
Correct.
There is something which I believe, and I would like to know your opinion about it, since we have seen during the last years how important the cloud is, and that the cloud has come to stay.
Correct.
And I believe that the having cloud skills and cloud knowledge is going to be kind of a standard, a requirement in order to get a job in the IT industry. Do you think the same, or do you think it's not like that, or what's your opinion?
I am of the mindset that it's 200% required, not just required. It's like mandatory. It's going to be going forward, and I speak on a weekly basis, sometimes on a daily basis, with folks who reach out to me via LinkedIn. If 10% of the discussion is on cloud, 90% usually is about their careers. And that's where I see a lot of people, new folks have questions, graduates have questions, even professionals who are already there in 10, 15 years, they have a lot of questions. Why? Because it's all boils down to your growth mindset. So if I quickly link this up with our Microsoft terminology, often if you see our CEO, right, he talks about building, nurturing a growth mindset. It's nothing but a focus on continual learning and improvement. This is first, that's fundamental. If you have that, and that's the first question I always tell people, you have to ask this yourself. Others should not point it out to you that, man, do you have a growth mindset? No, you should ask this first yourself. If you are supremely confident, yes, that I'm ready to learn, completely unlearn it 1 year down the line and relearn myself, then you are set for cloud. Second comes skilling. That's then is based, it's a fundamental question then on what your passion is, what your past experience is. If you're a .NET developer or a pure developer looking to move to cloud, there is a way. You're looking to specialize in DevOps, there's a way. Then you are purely from an administration, you love tinkering with Linux. Definitely you can have a career. Then I have a lot of folks who reach out to me on security. That's another fantastic area to specialize. That all boils down to your core specialization, passion area. But fundamentally, if you ask me, you need to build a continuous learning and growth mindset to be, a really professional, have a long career, in cloud. That's fundamental.
Yeah, I totally agree with you, and definitely you touch really important points. But there are still some cases where it is required to have an on-premise data center in order to be compliant with regional laws or local laws. What's your opinion about these hybrid cloud strategies?
Absolutely, absolutely. So I work with a mixed set of customers, to be honest. I have customers which are born in the cloud. We call it big. But then there are large enterprises for whom less than, even if they have billing in the order of millions in a year on any of the public clouds I'm talking about from my past experience, but predominantly 98% is still on premises. It's as you rightly mentioned, because of mandatory compliance reasons, latency, it could be authorizational regions, it could be specific to their region in which they are established or hosted, maybe they have mandatory laws, there could be many reasons. So on-premises is still gonna be there for a considerable, I think, the natural duration of our lives. That's my fundamental belief. And then again, you choose the stack based on your, specialization. I mean, every public cloud has an offering there. Again, Microsoft very fundamentally believes that you also have a extremely good, system if you build. So we have something called the, Stack Hub portfolio. So that's basically Azure Stack Hub. You have a Stack HCI, hyperconvergence, and then a integration interface to that. You have an Arc in which you can directly host maybe Kubernetes on-prem and maybe directly do maybe a DR on cloud. So these are definitely going to be there. That's positive.
Yeah, cool. I mean, I see also that requirement and that it will still be there. There are also, as you already mentioned, that the cloud ecosystem is really broad. There are kind of data. You can get specialized on data, on computing, on machine learning, on IoT, on serverless. There are a lot of them. And I think it's very difficult to know about all of them. And it is important to get specialized or to get focused on one of these topics or on multiple, depends on you. Maybe you can tell us what is your focus, although you already mentioned a little bit.
Yeah, so I basically, though because I started working on .NET as a developer, so I had the develop background. Having said that, when I moved to administration, I found out that's also pretty cool. But I figured it out very early that if you are to be respected as a consultant, and again, I'm going to repeat this line, you don't come in as a person who has just entered an organization to randomly sell stuff. But if you want to be respected as a consultant in the eyes of a CXO level executive, it is imperative that you know the fundamentals of all of these. You need to know infrastructure, you need to know compute very well, you need to be able to articulate when to use maybe serverless. It's not that because it's a hype, but you should identify the use cases. Then design patterns of data. It's a fundamental. Why? Because every organization, end of the day, hovers around data. And enterprises have terabytes and petabytes and exabytes of it. Correct? So understanding the data pattern is very important. Then, of course, there are niche areas, as you rightly mentioned. There is an IoT. Again, if you are a data architect like myself, I cannot separate myself and say, what, I don't know IoT. Why? Because in 50% of my data engineering cases, they are manufacturing organizations. They could be in thermal power, they could be in gas, in natural oil. So they are building nothing but massive systems of IoT. But they are underlying what? They're using the data constructs. So I figured out that if you are to be a world-class data engineer, come data architect, you still need to master the IoT aspect of it. So, these are all heavily linked. But for me, because I am a CSA data and AI, I am primarily focused on complex use cases of data. For me, it was, every discussion fundamentally, it always starts with understanding your data usage pattern, data estate modernization, then eventually helping the customers, leverage different services cost effectively. So maybe you are ingesting millions of, sensor data on Azure. There are tens and hundreds and dozens of ways you can effectively do it, right? But what is the most cost-effective, secure manner? That's the consulting they expect you to do. So for that, you yourself should be very well aware of the different services which are open source, which are in third party, which are again hosted on Azure. Because when they're expecting an answer, you just can't tell them, what, I know about my service, I don't know about the open source ones. So here again, I would like to add that point, which I always tell people, you need to have a fundamental good understanding of open source technologies, data patterns, toolkits, Apache Spark. These are like fundamental to my area of specialization.
Yeah, really, really interesting topic. Maybe you can give us a very short introduction or an overview of the Microsoft Asia products related to this topic.
Yeah, so I basically work on data and AI. So that includes like best practices first of all, of course. Then I provide architectural guidance. It could be directly to customers doing POC themselves or with partners implementing different things, right? So subdivided, they are mostly under two classes. We categorize them as data, and another is basically all these subset of services under AI. So within data, it basically starts with our fundamental, which we believe is the most comprehensive and most secure, most updated, data offering out there. That's SQL Server. And believe me, most of the enterprises or the mid-segment customers I work with, they already have massive landscapes of data on premises already using SQL Server, 2017, 2019, and so on. The ones now they are definitely looking to move to cloud or maybe new app development, they have a full set of services, like we call it Azure SQL database. But again, within that, you have subdivisions, your different type of deployment options. It could be single database. It could be elastic pools when you have such workloads which you can pool together and give resources to it. Or we have a new serverless option also. Maybe you want to do an intermittent type of use case. Let's say reporting you want to do once in a while. For that, you don't want to provision a server, right? So we have different versions, flavors to it. Having said that, we also have something called an MI. What is an MI? It's an Azure, what we call managed instance. It's a near compatible SQL Server, let's call hosted version managed PaaS service on cloud. So if you are looking to lift and shift your SQL Server, instead of doing that, you can also opt for MI on cloud. But then that's the SQL Server bit of it. But I also work heavily with a set of customers who are very passionate on NoSQL. They say, you know what, SQL is all good, but we have such use cases. We are building a recommendation engine maybe. For that, the metadata part of it, we want to store someplace. Or we want to ingest millions of data points via Event Hub. We're going to land it to a hot store. We don't want it to be SQL. So then Cosmos DB is our offering around there. So it's a fabulous service which comes with a whole lot of SLAs. It's an industry first. We are, in fact, and because I come from a MongoDB, Cassandra background, I can proudly tell this. I mean, if you're really passionate about NoSQL on cloud on Azure, you should check out this service called Azure Cosmos DB. So it's practically the only service which comes with all 4 SLAs. You got SLAs for throughput, network, availability. You got even for storage and so on. Then we also have the hosted options of MySQL, PostgreSQL, and MariaDB. And in that, I would like to touch upon, because I again primarily work with that team, and we had some major migrations and wins in that area. That is, if you want to host PostgreSQL, but there is a hyperscale option which is called Citus. So again, Citus is a company which Microsoft acquired, and hyperscale option is now as a service you can get on Postgre. It's fabulous if you really want to do auto sharding and so on. Then comes one of my favorite services, which because I love Spark, so it's called basically Azure Databricks. So that's nothing but hosted Spark on cloud. Again, it's not a product manufactured by Microsoft, because Databricks exists as a separate company. Microsoft heavily invested in it, and the joint product is referred to as Azure Databricks. Again, I got a huge set of customers who absolutely love Databricks. It's fast, it's sleek, the UI is supreme, and you can use it for complex ETL transformations, machine learning, deep learning. I mean, name any data use case, throw at it. The Spark is the answer. Databricks you can use it for. But then again, we have a service called Azure Synapse Analytics, which is more towards building end-to-end, service for analytics on Azure. And within this, you have a choice of 2 pools. You can choose a SQL pool, a serverless or a provisioned, or you can use a Spark pool. So again, we recently came to know that the Apache Spark pool, is more fast or super performant compared to the Azure Databricks. So again, you have your different choices on Azure. It's not an exclusive one. You can choose either or both together maybe. But these are the set of services around it. And then, of course, we cannot end any conversation without talking about Power BI. It's a market leader for decades. I think 13 consecutive times it's been in the Gartner Leaders Quadrant. So I got every customer I work with in my 7 territories, I loves Power BI. So they do complex data visualizations. Again, it has its own set of products. I have customers using Power BI Pro or Premium or Embedded based on their use cases. So this is the full set of data that I specialize in. But there's another new world, which is the AI part of it. So in that AI, Microsoft basically divides it as 3 categories. First, we call it so if you are, let's say, a company which quickly wants to get started on the AI journey on Microsoft. So then what we have is we have taken the AI models, exposed them as APIs for you, readily consumable in your code. Python, Scala, .NET, let's call it. So those set of envelope of APIs, we call it the Azure Cognitive Service APIs. They're vision, language, they're different kind of APIs you can really leverage. So I got a lot of customers who quickly get onboarded to the AI journey, first embedding those. So let's say you rather creating a sentiment analysis API, you can quickly use the text analytics API, does sentiment analysis for you. But the second stage of customers is who say, you know what, I would love to use not maybe APIs, but I'm more focused on the communication aspect of it. So Microsoft provides you a chatbot framework. You can use then the NLP framework. We have something called LUIS, Language Understanding Information Service, and you can use those for even betterment. You can add more complexity, more NLP-based use cases to it. So I got a huge set of customers again who first start on the quick, simple Q&A maker chatbot, maybe for a chatbot like internal for an organization, help desk, and then get into building more complex chatbots. And then there have a final frontier of customers who are much more advanced. So these are the usually fintech companies or companies who already have data scientists internally. They usually build the models. So then you have choice of building these models, right? You can use Azure Machine Learning Services or knowledge mining, or you can use something like a DSVM, we call it. So DSVM stands for Data Science Virtual Machine. So you have a fully, let's call it baked in image with all the libraries installed, and you can spin up a Windows or a Linux machine and then do the low-level code yourself. Then you can train it on GPU VMs. So that's also something I work on heavily. So I got a lot of fintech companies who use these GPU VMs for very complex deep learning, inferencing and such workloads. So it's a dynamic work role, but encompasses a lot of services actually at Microsoft.
Wow, thank you very much for that introduction about Asia. It was very detailed, but also with real examples that companies are using. So thank you very much for that input. Very interesting. Let's change a little bit the topic right now. Let's get more personal. Let's get more to the human behind that Microsoft guy. So I see that you are very active in the social media. You share a lot of knowledge. You write blogs. You are very active in events.
Correct.
Could you share with us your experiences? When did you start it? Why? What are your goals?
So I basically started a long time back, but I figured this out quickly that if you are learning from others, it's the best way to also self-assess yourself and continually reassess of what you have learned. Because I am a great believer of self-learning, but often you miss out on key aspects. So when you attend meetings, when you go to groups, user groups, which basically, I picked up this, habit of going to Linux user groups actually a long time back. So all of the kernel development and all of these, info we used to share with one another used to come in very help. So same thing for, for Amazon AWS user groups when I used to visit, for the Azure ones. Then I am also very active in attending different partner events. So where partners showcase their, skills, let's say something new solution they have built or a product, which they have maybe made a factory product, right? So it's very important to, learn from these. And then I believe also a bit on giving back. So I also participate in events within Microsoft, do a lot of trainings, and then also participate in webinars. It's good to share knowledge, also, and take feedback on what's working, what's not working from customers. So I'm a big believer on that, yeah.
I totally agree with you. I also try to share as much knowledge as possible, as well as participate. Interacting with the community is very, very important for me. And I think, I'm missing actually this during this situation.
Yes.
I would love to get more in touch with more people during the events, webinars, or whatever offline. The next question is a little bit tricky because I know how many things you learn every day, but I would like you to share with us one of the latest things that you learn and you would like to share with us.
Okay, so I keep on learning new stuff every week, every day. So just to add to this, I have, because people often ask this, that how do you take time out? That I think is the most common question that I get on chats or when people speak to me. So I tell them that I am a very disciplined person overall, but I have a strict regimen. So I take out an hour in the morning or at least an hour at night. But I keep learning new stuff both on the Microsoft platform and not. So for example, let's say something very recently I learned was a tool which I was not aware of, but it exists in the Microsoft platform. It's called TSI. So TSI stands for Time Series Insights. So usually when I have a lot of customers who kind of, so it's very simply to explain. So you have a, let's call it a platform which is ingesting data in high volume from sensors. Often people use Apache Spark on Databricks to do the streaming. And then you ingest, and then basically you land, and then you use different PySpark, let's say libraries to process the data. But what if I asked you, or what the customer asked me and my team was, you know what? I have team ready to start building, but I need to quickly get out of the box features. Do you have any service which can do all of this for me? Ingest, connect, land, build the models, the time series models, but I don't have people to do it manually. So that's where this particular service we came to know. It's called Azure Time Series Insights. It's a fully managed serverless, PaaS service, fantastic for doing time series analytics. I mean, we really went, live with the customer with this weeks matter actually. So I really got time, again, a quick shift in mindset, because have always been doing this via Apache Spark, pools in Synapse Analytics, or, via Spark, in Databricks. So something I quickly learned. It was a great learning actually of a new service. And overall, I'm picking up a lot of things I learned, Python. I'm doing some network programming on Python. I, revision a lot of things on open source. I plan giving the LPI exams on Linux, so I do a lot of Linux studies on the Pablo. So a lot of things happening in parallel. I keep learning.
That sounds amazing. Thank you very much for sharing that, and for motivating and inspiring also others into continue learning, no matter in which industry, no matter in which area you are specialized.
Correct.
The cloud is changing every day, and the cloud are releasing new features, new products, new services. If not every week, every 2 weeks. It's kind of crazy. And
correct.
That's what I wanted to ask to you. How do you do that? How do you do to keep yourself up to date?
See, it's one part is, again, once you so the answer is like twofold. One is you have to build a growth mindset and inculcate it. That's what, at least after joining Microsoft, it has really helped me, because Satya, it's not because of Satya says, but our organization is built around the principle of continuous learning. Yeah. So that automatically gets inculcated, right? And specifically where I am in data architect, your margin of error scope is very less, because a particular data pattern, multiple types, solutions that can suffice what you really need to know on the spot. You can't go back to someone to ask, right? So that's a combo fear plus a good factor that you have that continuous mindset of learning. But then the second aspect of it is, of course, I have a strict regime that I follow. So that's something which I speak to always with people, that just having intent does not cut it. It's like saying that I have good intent, I'm a good person. I mean, what are you doing with it? Correct. So you have to have a regime, like you have to take out an hour of the day in the mornings or in the evening. Like I never use both my weekends to chill out and party. I never do that. Either on a Saturday, then I study on the Sunday, or on Sunday, then I make sure Friday evening or Saturday, I do some studies, because new things are coming up. I need to be able to be ready. So that kind of, if you have a growth mindset plus a little discipline baked into your career, I mean, you will be set. If you really want to have a prolonged career in cloud, I mean, that's the fundamental understanding.
That's really a very good advice. And I would like you to think about it, because I think it's very, very important to understand what basically Subhasish has tried to explain, which is basically enjoy, but continue working every day, continue developing yourself every day. It's not only about professional skills, but also about personal skills, about hard skills and soft skills, because this will make a difference not only in your career, but also in your personal development.
Agree, I totally agree.
Yeah, and the last question, maybe you can share with us which blogs, podcasts, videos, or which kind of content are you consuming to keep yourself up to date?
Yeah, so from the Microsoft site, I'll be, I follow the data. So we have a couple of blogs specifically focused on the product area. So we have a data blog which comes out very often, amazing posts. And when I say posts, means not just informative posts, but they give benchmark numbers, they give deep technical, optimization tricks. So I follow them regularly, and I carry them out also to test it out whether I can do a justification or not. That's primarily number one. Number two, I also read a lot about not just from Microsoft, but also do a lot of industry reading. So because I have access to, I read a lot of Gartner papers. I download a lot of SNG Synergy Group research papers. I wherever I get hands on research papers or on white papers, I read. It may be fundamentally linked to my work. It may not be, but still, the knowledge never goes in waste. That's my fundamental belief. And third, of course, as I mentioned, I go to a lot of user groups and participate in webinars. It may sound strange, but any webinar invite that I get, Spark, cloud, maybe even on-premises technologies, even maybe a obscure company which has launched a product and I've got a LinkedIn invite, I still register and attend. Because there's no harm in knowing the product, right? You may get ideas from your own solutions that you're working on. Again, it's the continuous growth mindset that you don't know everything, but you have that scope of learning, right? That is very important.
I really appreciate your career. I really appreciate how you professionally evolve your life. And I would like just to thank you very much for participating. It's been really a pleasure. I have learned personally a lot from you. I got really inspired, and I want just to thank to you and for giving us your time.
Yeah, most welcome. Thank you, Pablo, for having me, and really, insightful, good questions, and look forward definitely sharing with you, and look forward connecting with you in the future as well.
Yeah, what I will do for sure is I will share your social medias, all your social networks and URLs in the description in case anyone wants to contact you or in case anyone wants to follow you and see which kind of content are you creating. And yeah, I hope that you enjoy your time here. And basically, this was for it.
Thank you so much. Absolutely, please do. Look forward.
All right. Then see you in the next podcast. Bye-bye.
Definitely. Bye. Take care then. Bye.